Hey everybody, in less than a minute we're going to get right into our pulled pork signature techniques that we use at Gut Smokehouse Barbecue. First and foremost, the meat. Pork shoulder, also known as Boston butt, pork butt, or blade roast. We never get the part that has the word picnic in it. Although it's good, it's not good for pulled pork. We then take the pork and we season it on all sides with our favorite rub. Place it in an aluminum half pan with the fat side up and place it in the smoker. One call out here is to not season your butt too heavily or it will cake up and fall off. Now let's pick up with the butt just about ready to come out of the smoker. Alright, so now we're going to check what's going on. Oh my. Look at that. Glistening in the morning sun. Oh yeah. And so this here is really what you're looking for, that nice dark crust. Alright, not all the fat has melted away, which is what we want. But yeah, we got a good crust and bark on the outside. And we're going to cover this up, but we're not going to put anything on here so that that crust can continue to form as it rests. And the next thing we do is just simply cover them completely in foil and let them rest for about 2 to 3 hours, at which time they should be just about ready to pull from a temperature perspective, and we'll get to that next. Okay, so you saw us all the way up to the point where we wrapped the pork butt, and it's been a few hours, and now we're going to unveil the pork butt, and I'm going to show you a couple of things that we do that we believe makes our pulled pork extra delicious. So we're just going to pull the foil off, and for this demonstration purpose I'm not wearing gloves just so I could point things out a little bit better. But here's what you have. Again, all that liquid gold is very important to the pulled pork and also to some other side dishes that we make as well. So what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to actually take this and I'm going to put it in a big pan. I'm going to pick it up. Again, it's cooled off enough to where I can touch it with my hands. And set that off to the side. And hopefully we can get a good shot here of the pork. Okay, let me bend this down a little bit. There we go. Okay. So the one key thing is, on every pork butt, if you'll notice, right at the end of this bone here, there is a lot of times a knob of the absolute worst tasting piece of pulled pork you'll ever find, and there it is. There it is. It's right at the end of this bone on the side, and this is just total rubber. And you want to make sure that's the first thing you do is discard this, because once you start pulling this apart, it's very hard to find until somebody bites into it and says, ew. Alright, so what we do next is, if you notice the bark here, now this is one of the key points to our pulled pork. If you notice the bark here, it's like a layer. Okay, it's the fat that is caramelized on top, like right here. Okay, caramelized, so you got a nice crust on the top, but then on the underneath it's still a little bit moist with just a little bit of that rendered fat on there. And that's the stuff we want to save, and I'll show you exactly what we're going to do with it. So the very first thing we do is pull all this off the top, and again there, save all that. There's the nice bark on top, and we're just going to pull all this off. And here's a really nice piece here of the bark, and then the underneath, it's just enough fat there, just so that it is incredibly moist. If you ever want just a little nibble of pork, right there, that's it. Holy cow, look at that. I mean, if you ever want a little nibble of pork that just sends you to the moon, that's the one. All right, we're going to put this aside for right now and show you what we do with that. Get a cutting board out, and on the cutting board we'll take our what we call bark fat here at Gut Smokehouse Barbecue, and with the bark side down we'll just cut it like this. Okay, cut it like that. Again, fat side up, bark side down. It's just much easier to cut through this way. We'll cut it into tiny little pieces like this. And this to me is really, probably out of everything we do, probably the key component to the pork tasting extremely luscious, yet not fatty. And then we'll turn them to the sides and we'll just chop them this way. And there you have it. There you have it, what we call chopped bark fat. So when this is put into pulled pork and it's heated or warmed or reheated, this will continue to melt, and some of those little crispy bits will get into the pulled pork, blend in, and you'll be biting into those as you eat your pulled pork. So put that to the side. Come back to our pork. All right, so the first thing we want to do, let's get rid of some of this other bark fat. We'll keep that aside. As you can see, the juices are rendering out nicely, which is awesome. Is we'll take this bone and we'll just pull the bone out. And the bone should slide out very easily, just like that. And that's what happens when you cook it to 205, 210 degrees. Everything just kind of falls apart. So you'll notice here that we have a bunch of different muscles. In between each muscle is connective tissue. So the goal here is to basically take the pork and break it apart and just feel, like you can just look, you can just see, just feel for the parts that don't feel like you'd want to eat them. Maybe a dog would, and then just notice that there are whole chunks of meat. And then we do the same with the rest. We literally just go in and just let the meat fall apart as it's pulling away from its connective counterparts. So again, there we go. You got a nice slab there. There's some of the yucky connective tissue. And then also on the other side of this big muscle, we've got some additional connective tissue. And then there we have delicious pork. And we'll just keep doing the same. As you can see, I'm not doing anything. I'm just letting the muscles fall apart naturally here. And just reach in there, and anything that feels kind of weird or awkward that you aren't sure of, you just pull it out and discard it. But look at that. That is just beautiful. And we just continue to do it with the rest of the pork. Now, let me just show you something really quick here. If you're ever doing the pork and somebody's by your smoker and you want to give them a little taste of the pulled pork, this was the top where the bark fat was. So underneath there are these strands. I call them cables. But you pull those off, and they literally are layered between the top fat and a layer of fat on the bottom. Right there is a piece of pulled pork that you want to give somebody that wants to come up before you're actually done, for an incredible nibble that they'll never forget. Stop the presses, stop the presses. As I continued to pull the pork butts, I found a perfect example of a layer of bark fat that I want to show you, as well as a great example of a layer of the cables within the bark fat. I'll give you another example of a piece of perfect bark fat that came off. You notice there's the bark. Right there, that is just, and it just came off in one solid piece. You can still see some of the herbs and spices there, but right there, that is exactly what you're looking for. Right there. Oh man, you can wrap it up like a taco. Okay, one more thing I noticed as I was taking the bark fat off this other one is, when I pulled the bark fat off, I got a pretty big chunk, okay? And I'm like, oh, you know what? I think this might have that little surprise muscle in between, which I call the cable. Lo and behold, if you look, in between this layer of fat, bark fat, there lies, and also this very thin layer of fat, which is fine to keep in there because it disintegrates, there lies what we call the cables. And these are the things, you just pull these out like this, and man, oh, that is just succulent. See how it's trapped between these two layers of fat? So I got very excited when I saw that. Now back to pulling the pork. So again, I'm pulling this off here, and as you can see, I got some nice bark on here. So we're gonna actually take that piece as well, put that in our pile for bark fat, and then you just continue on. Again, you're just picking it up and things are just falling away. The muscles are just separating themselves. Just scrape a little bit of the skin off there as you're going through. And again, this isn't necessary, but hey, let's face it, who wants to eat this? And again here, nice little hunk of muscle and some not so nice connective tissue. So our pork is hand pulled all the time, because if we didn't do it, all this stuff would just get mixed in. And is it a big deal? I don't know. Some people don't think it is, but we do. There is a hunk of muscle in here that I want to show you. I mean, even though it does look moist, it's drier than the rest of it. So what we'll do is we'll find that one, and when you're going through this, trust me, it's pretty easy to find. We'll take that and we'll actually soak it right back in these juices until we're ready to pull. Alright, so for the most part, I think we got most everything pulled out of there. And the next thing we're going to do is show you how we make our pulled pork from everything we separated. Alright, now for the assembly of the pulled pork. Again, we've got all of our meat. And normally when we do this, the meat is still quite warm. It has cooled off a little bit, so it's not going to fall apart as it normally would. But we've got our meat, all the connective tissue has been separated out, all the kind of the yuckiness. We've got our bark fat sitting over here. I don't know if you could see it, but it's right here. We've got butter over here. We've got brown sugar. We've got our drippings. We've got our barbecue rub, and we've got two different barbecue sauces. Our homemade barbecue sauce, and probably my favorite off-the-shelf barbecue sauce you can find. And the only place I've ever seen it is at BJ's. It's Casey Masterpiece Private Stock. If I don't have barbecue sauce for some reason in the house, this is my go-to barbecue sauce for sure. Alright, so first thing we do is we take literally a handful of brown sugar. We go in and take a handful of our barbecue rub. Take a couple good scoops of butter. We'll take about 3/4 of a cup of our homemade barbecue sauce. We'll take a couple good squirts of KC Masterpiece. And then last but not least, the creme de la creme, the bark fat. Alright, now the fun part. We just mix everything together, and as you're mixing it together, you'll be breaking it apart. You don't want to squish it. You just want to basically break it apart as you're mixing it together. And once it's mixed together somewhat, we'll go in and we'll get some of that au jus. Definitely could use a little bit more moisture, so we're going to go in and get some au jus, put that in there. That'll thin out the sauce also a little bit. And I like thin sauces because it allows the sauce to get down into every single nook and cranny of the pulled pork. And we'll just work this all in until all the meat is pulled apart. And then at that point, I have a hungry monster over here. Oh. Okay, pardon my wife. She had to come over. And again, as we're mixing, we're just very carefully shredding it like so. And again, when this is warmer, it definitely is a lot easier to shred. But again, we're not squeezing it. We're just kind of working in, and as we twist it, we're pulling it apart. See if I can get you an example here of one. Like this one here, as we mix it, we'll just take it, we'll just pull it apart. And we'll flip it over so everything is good and coated. And I think pulled pork, although it's incredible right now, I think pulled pork is actually better after this all marries, soaks into the meat, all the spices and the fresh barbecue rub, the au jus, etc. Now you'll notice it's a little bit light, so if it's a little bit not to the color that we want, we'll just add a little bit of our homemade barbecue sauce to it so it gets to the right color, and then that's it. So let's find a little piece here to give it a taste. But as you can see, it's not smushed, it's nicely pulled apart. Okay, let's give it a try. Wow, that's good. Oh man. Got the brown sugar. You got the nice sweetness and tartness from the barbecue sauce. You got the richness from the butter and the drippings, and then the bark fat. That's another reason to let it marinate and reheat it. The bark fat gets a chance to continue to dissolve, and that's it. So that's the way we do our pulled pork. Extremely time consuming and laborsome. You know, we put this pork in last night at 8:30 at night. It came off sometime this morning. We let it rest, and now we're pulling it. So it's a good day and a half worth of work to do this. So I'm going to pull the rest of the butts. Thanks for joining us. I hope you learned a lot today. I hope you learned some new stuff. Again, we shared some of our secrets, not secrets, we shared some of our techniques that we use to make our pulled pork some of the best you'll ever have. So thanks for joining us. Have a great day. Hit that subscribe button. God bless. Talk to you later.